The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the animated series episode, The Magicks of Magicks 2. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel is Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, Jimmy's on assignment. I like to say that. I don't know. He's off doing his own thing right now. I just want to say he's on assignment. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook, where we're facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us when you find us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. We're on Instagram at StarQuest Network. We're on YouTube, where we're also StarQuest. Find us wherever you want to look for us on social media, and leave us comments in all those places. We love to hear from you and have conversations with you, and we'll even share it in a future episode. I want to tell you about another show on the network you are sure to enjoy called Raising the Bets. It's a show I do with my wife, Melanie, and you can find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. So, Father Cory, can you give me... I almost said Jimmy. Father Cory, can you give us a recap of this episode?
Yeah, since Jimmy's gone, someone else has to step in, so I would be glad to.
Thank you.
The Enterprise is sent to the Galactic Core to look for Shakari. Investigate a theory that matter was originally created there and continues to be created. Entering the core, the ship is caught up in a matter-energy hurricane and moved to an alternate universe. All the systems of the ship shut down, but the crew is saved by Lucian, an alien from the planet Magicks 2, who calls the humans friends. Lucian brings Kirk, Spock, and McCoy to his planet and shows that belief in magic rules in this universe. Not just friendship, but also belief in magic. Back on the ship, crew members begin experimenting with the rules of magic, bringing them to the attention of the other members of the Megan species. The crew is put on trial in a recreation of Salem, Massachusetts, where it is revealed that the Megans came to Earth to help humanity, but they were abused, culminating in the Salem witch trials. Spock and Kirk are able to show the Megans that humanity has changed, and humanity is once again in friendship with the Megans. The crew is restored to the Enterprise and returned to their own universe. And as Jimmy says, the end.
The end. So let's start at the top here. So the whole point for them going to the center of the galaxy was this idea that if the galaxy was created by a great explosion, then the center of the galaxy might still be creating new matter.
Despite the law of conservation of matter.
Yeah, this is not a scientific. This is not, Jimmy would explain all the science for this if he were here, but just trust me, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
And they hand it away that this alternate universe that they end up in is where matter is created by quote unquote magic. You know, it's not really magic. It's whatever force creates the matter. It's a different set of physical laws. Right.
And this center of the galaxy is the is like this doorway to this other dimension, basically. So when they get to this, what they call the creation point, the creation of new matter looks like fireworks, apparently.
Fireworks in a hurricane.
Yes, and they get sucked into this matter energy whirlwind at warp speed. I think over warp 10, which is really fast.
Yeah,
and Spock comes with the idea of going to the eye of the storm, where it'll be calm, apparently. And then they go on a weird trip, man.
Yeah.
Through the center of everything, outside of time and space.
Wow, man.
Wow. Psychedelic. This is very, very early 70s.
Very, very psychedelic. This was, early 70s, so this was very much psychedelic.
Yeah. And that's when Lucian, the ripped satyr, so Goat Man, he's got these abs that don't stop. Like this, it's so funny.
And they even flex him at one point. Like he moves his arms and they flex.
Yeah, I mean, the animators had some fun with him. He's like really ripped, and he appears on the bridge and he's saving the ship from collapsing due to a suspension of the laws of nature. That's one of the things he's because it's outside of our universe, in a different universe where there are different laws of nature. He tells us his name is Lucian. He kidnaps Spock, the captain, and McCoy to this planet where all kinds of weirdness starts happening. More psychedelic. Whoa, man. you're kind of rippling like liquid. And
Yeah.
then he, and this is where we're told that the world works on magic, which, they call it magic, but it's essentially mental power can alter reality, basically.
Right. It's like I said, it's different physical laws that matter can be created through just willing it, basically, kind of the idea of, I believe that I can do this. And it comes to that point where it's the crew start experimenting it that, I believe I can make, a beautiful woman appear. I believe that I can make that chess piece move, all because of, this magic, this law of how matter is created.
Yeah. I noticed that Sulu makes a girl right away. Like,
yeah, that turns out to be Lucian.
Yeah. The shore leaf planet, right? They get Sulu imagined the damsel in distress, that's Sulu.
Yep. Exactly.
So Lucian says in their universe, there's no conflict or rivalry, but among the Megans, but there are also no other life. They're the only life forms in their universe. So that's when they decided to travel to Earth in our dimension, where they became advisors. So basically, if you've watched the MCU anytime recently, like the Asgard or the Eternals or all of these other ancient alien beings who came to Earth so long ago and became the mythological gods of different peoples. So and that's basically what they did.
Asgards are little gray men. Oh wait, that's a different universe.
Oh, yes, the different Asgard.
Yeah.
I want to see I was gonna see the Thor from Stargate with Mjolnir, the hammer. That would be fun. Or
I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure there's a meme somewhere.
Or like Chris Hemsworth with him. That would be really fun.
That would be cool.
Cross the streams. But there's also this weird vibe from Lucian where he needs to hide them from his people. Like he's got these new friends. I'm so glad to see you, but I need to hide you from my people. And that's when they start using the magic of the universe, that's when the others find out.
Well, and Lucian had put a shield around or a fog is how they described it, but a shield around the planet to prevent the other Megans from seeing the Enterprise in orbit around the planet.
Right. But that doesn't save the Enterprise crew once they start using the magic. And the other Megans discover the Enterprise, and then they recreate this version of Salem, Massachusetts, put the entire crew in stocks, which is a lot of stocks because there's 400, supposed to be 400 people on the Enterprise.
Well, you only see about 20, but of course that's probably just what they wanted to draw.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't want to have to draw everybody. So I used to live in Salem. I know quite a bit about the Salem witch trials and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of funny that they brought this up. But for some reason they're dressed as pilgrims. That's not how people in Salem dressed. But hey, it's a recreation. They could cosplay as Salemites as much.
They're just as much into history as they are into true science. So
yes. So then we have the introduction of a new character, the prosecutor and judge, Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a name from mythology. Isn't that like in mythology is a demon's name?
I think so. See, these are all, at least you only get the two names, Asmodeus and Lucian, who we find out later is Lucifer.
Lucifer, yeah.
And of course, both of which are, demons, which makes sense. But I can't remember. I heard the name before, but I can't remember.
So,
what the
according to the
is.
book of Tobit, Asmodeus was a prince of demons who was smitten with love for Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, and he's the one who killed her 7 husbands on their wedding nights.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So all these characters are taking over demons. Christian evil figures, if you will. Demons. Right. Of course, Lucifer being Satan. And so on. So
right, and what they're trying to do is turn it on its head. Like the reason why they're not really demons, that the humanity turned on them and created stories about them being demons because we were afraid of their powers of magic that that we primitive humans were afraid of and persecuted them. He says when humans couldn't get them to use their power to serve their own greed, they turned on them and accused them of being demons and evil. So this is a kind of story that you see in certain science fiction at different times. The whole like the myths of religion turns out to just be aliens after all. You know, it's the Chariots of the Gods thing. You know, that goes back to that stuff, and it was very popular in the 60s and 70s. This notion that religions were really based on encounters with aliens.
Well, even into the 90s, but yeah.
Well, right, but this is, I mean, a lot of it came up then. You saw this a lot.
Well, and this is getting to like Joseph Campbell and in the stuff that he wrote. He was, you know, everybody knows him for like the hero's tale. He's the one who, you know, explicitly talks about the hero's tale, you know, the hero's journey.
Right.
But he also talked about a lot of stuff like this, that a lot of mythology comes from other sources. That, you know, it's, you know, the religion isn't, mysticism and things like that all come from different sources. And one of those could be, you know, outside influence from our species. Right.
And it's kind of predictable because it was around the same time when people started, you know, modernizing and, you know, rejecting religion and institutional religion as old-fashioned and old. And so, you know, seeing and Gene Roddenberry himself was a humanist who didn't have any use for religion in his own personal life.
Yeah.
And so to see this come up in Star Trek several times over the years, not surprising, I guess.
No. And there's also a lot of deconstructing religion. Again, this is going into, you know, talking about that, you know, these weren't really demons, they were aliens, but there's a lot of deconstructing religion at this time too, of let's tear it down to its constituent parts and find out what it's really about, not the cruft that's been tribute that added to it over the years, you know, scrape off the barnacles from the whole kind of thing.
Right. So again, not surprising that they would this sort of story would crop up, especially at this time.
Exactly.
So they it turns out that the Megans who had gone to Earth eventually all settled in Salem, because of course, and that's when they were persecuted as witches. In fact, the witch trials was a persecution at the beginning of Catholics, of poor uneducated Catholics whose prayers in Latin were thought to be magic spells. And you know, you had little old Irish ladies who worked as maids or, you know, house servants of one sort or another, who would say their prayers in Latin, and then bad things would happen in the house because, you know, bad things happen to people all the time. And then they would blame her as casting a spell. You made that little girl sick. I think it was the first one. This little girl or little boy died of some mysterious illness, and so they thought it was the Irish maid who was casting a magic spell. And then eventually it just became a way of, you know, if you wanted to get rid of an enemy, you would just call them a witch. They would be hauled off.
Exactly. And, you know, it's, you know, people talk about with magic, you got hocus pocus and abracadabra. Well, both are playing off of the Latin mass. You know, hocus pocus, hoc in corpus meum.
Yes.
You know,
this is the body of Christ, or this is my body. Yeah.
This is my body. You know, of course, the very words of consecration. Well, hocus pocus is actually a insult to that. You know, it's twisting that. You know, and so it's being used as an insult. So those words, I can't remember where abracadabra comes from, but it's another Latin phrase that kind of it plays off of. But it's just like those were insults to the mass, and of course now people just use them. You know, oh, that's just a universal, you know, magic word.
Right. And that was part of it. Is just the superstition about Catholics in Salem was really the origin of that.
Yep.
Which is interesting. Also, given that the first Catholic mass in New England, in Massachusetts, I think it was the one that was in Salem in the Unitarian minister's house.
Well, that's funny.
Bentley was the name. But yeah, which was kind of interesting. He was very progressive in the sense of being welcoming to Catholics. So you had a lot of like French and Irish sailors who would come through Salem. Salem was a huge port back in the day. And so this is kind of a tangent. Sorry, folks, but you know, I lived in Salem for long enough. I have a
history.
lot of
history geekery is good geekery too.
Yes, and Catholic history geekery, because there's so much Catholic history in Salem.
Oh, yes.
Which, interestingly. But anyway, the Megans were in this story were burned as witches there, and so now they and survived apparently. They were only mostly dead, and so it turns out they don't actually want to hurt the Enterprise crew because remember, they don't believe in conflict, in rivalry in this universe. But Spock is called on to be their representative to defend them against the charges that they of being humanity. Although not everyone there is actually human, right? Like Spock is half human.
I will say they actually call that out. They say you are different. That Spock isn't just human. He is, Vulcan. So they do actually kind of call that out. It's like, yeah, you're not just human. So, okay, you're good. You can be but this defender.
Also, Lieutenant Maress, she's the Caitian, the cat people.
Yep.
And who is the other one with the arm out of his middle of his chest who replaced Chekhov?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, Kirk's defense that Spock picks up is that humans have changed since Salem, as you said. So they decided to consult the record banks of the Enterprise, and we have a representation of the record banks flying through the air, reel-to-reel tapes and punch cards. I got a kick out of that. All this high-tech stuff.
Well, that was high-tech back in 1972, and now we're just like, oh, isn't that quaint?
Yes, right. The idea that the Enterprise runs on punch cards would be just
well, it's more plausible than actually it's less plausible than their little cartridges that they would stick in it, but
yes, those are like disk drives, but yeah. So the Megans end up determining that the Enterprise's arrival was an accident and unlikely to be repeated, so they let them go. But they do sentence Lucien to isolation for eternity, basically. It sentences him to hell, right? Yeah. And Kirk defends him, and that surprises the Megans. It turns out Lucien is Lucifer. So, again, it's this, the devil's not really a bad guy. He's just misunderstood.
Exactly.
And so Kirk gets in a magic battle with the Megans, which is fun he has to win the magic battle to save Lucien.
Which turns out to actually be a test. It was actually a test by the Megans. Whether or not whether or not humanity has changed, whether or not they're willing to fight for one of theirs.
Right. Yeah. It's, because Kirk says, I want to keep you, I'm doing this because I don't want you to be as bad as the people who started the witch trials. That's what it is. And so that's what you're being. So, then we have, they're set free, and Spock, we have to have that wrap up, where they're on the bridge and they're talking about it. And, Spock says, well, it's the second time Lucifer was cast out, and thanks to Kirk, the first time he was saved. Man, yeah. And so
I expected to hear the Rolling Stones "Sympathy for the Devil" play at this point, but I think that actually might be later than this. I can't remember when that one came out, but
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So as you kind of alluded to at the beginning, a lot of this sounds like what they would pick up later for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, this idea that going to the Shakari, going to the center of the galaxy to find God, in this case, not finding God, but finding demons. Apparently, the original pitch for this episode was that they would actually be searching for God, but the NBC said, no, you can't have God in the show on daytime TV. So instead, because it'd be unmasking God as an alien in that sense. So, but they were okay with it being demons.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's always aliens and demons.
Well, in Shakari, I bet you I have a feeling they pulled off of this episode for the idea of Shakari in the first place, because it was a place in Vulcan mythology that all creation originated there.
Right.
So, and that's, of course, the whole premise of this episode is they're going to where all creation originated, or at least the universe or the galaxy originated. And they, and that's where they found all this, matter being created and all that, So
right.
I wonder if they really did kind of play off of this to begin with for Star Trek V.
I would think so. I mean, it's funny because Memory Alpha doesn't say a word about it, despite at least I didn't see it. Maybe I.
Yeah, and it didn't see it on the page for the Magicks. Of course, you look up Shakari. And it's
right.
Then you can find out about that. Actually, I was going to look and see if the bottom. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about if came from the idea of. Actually, I like this. The word Shakari supposedly is an allusion to Sean Connery, who they wanted to play Cybok.
Oh wow!
That's trying funny. To pronounce Sean Connery Shakari.
Could you imagine if Sean Connery had been Cyborg? That would have been
that would have been amazing.
Amazing. Like, I'm not sure it would have been good, but it would have been amazing.
Yes, it would have.
One thing Memory Alpha does say is that Roddenberry liked the thought of the Enterprise being confronted by God, and it has a quote. Gene thought that was the greatest thing he'd ever heard of, noted Brody, the writer. He said, I've been trying for years to just get that out in that way. I never really thought about just doing it. So, all right, let's do that. And additionally, Brody recalled Roddenberry smiling and saying, I've always wanted to write about the Enterprise meeting God, but NBC's primetime bosses always shot it down. Let's see if we can slip it past the daytime boys. Spoilers, they couldn't.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't. This comes from an extra on the DVD for the animated series called "Drawn to the Final Frontier." So I don't know if that's a reference to Star Trek V or if it's more about space, the Final Frontier.
Yeah, the galactic core that no one had been to before was the Final Frontier. By the way, as we're poking around Memory Alpha, Larry Brody wrote another episode for a Star Trek series.
Oh,
Tattoo from Voyager, one of our rated worst episodes. That was a Chakotay episode where he has all the vision quests and all that.
Oh, with his dad, right? That's the one where he's with his dad.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this guy! Someone should have stopped him before.
Once was enough. One bad episode was enough.
I know. Oh wow, yeah. I mean, that's not the worst Voyager episode. That's.
But it did make our lists. And I think it was on mine for sure.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Because of all the bad Native American.
Yeah, that was the one that I had picked because not so much because of the episode itself, but because of a representation of how Chakotay and Native American spirituality is represented.
But Brody isn't the guy who had all the bad Native American spirituality stuff. Like he wasn't the fake Indian, as they call him.
He wasn't the advisor, no.
Oh, okay. That was the other guy. Interesting. Well,
so anyways, we've gone well astream from this episode, although it all connects.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's a 20-minute animated episode that does not much to it. So, there's plenty. We're only 20-something minutes in discussing it, so it's going to be a short episode.
We've had a couple of TAS episodes already that have had some, good plot and good things to talk about.
Right.
This one, not so much.
Yeah, this one just doesn't have. I mean, we've talked about all the interesting bits of it. I mean, it does what it says. I mean, maybe Jimmy picked a good week to take off, but
his reaction when we mentioned this episode, he was like, "I'm glad I'm missing that one."
Yeah,
or I'm not.
Exactly.
I'm not heartbroken. I'm missing that one. That's more the way he phrased it.
Yeah. It's it's interesting. So the Asmodeus was played by Ed Bishop. He was the only non-regular cast member. So George Takei did one of the Megan voices. James Doohan, who did a lot of voices for the animated series, was the voice of Lucian. But Ed Bishop was Asmodeus, and apparently he was a fan of Star Trek beforehand, and so he ended up getting a job on this one. I don't know if it was because he liked Star Trek or just was happy that he got the job because he liked it. But if if you've ever seen the British sci-fi series UFO, which I have like very, very vague memories of, he was in that. So
nice.
Commander Ed Straker on that. All right, let's wrap up this episode. Do you have any last thoughts, Father Cory? Anything left to say?
Nothing here. Nope. We pretty well covered it.
We did. All right, so we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of Star Trek, including John W., SR, Joseph G., Francesco M., and JP. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of Star Trek in all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. What did you think of the Magicks of Megas 2? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the premiere of Season 3 of Lower Decks.
Yay!
Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, this was the second time Lucifer was cast out, but thanks to Kirk, the first time he was saved.
Oh.